Hello everyone, it's Oddsprite and welcome to Oddsprite Live, my first ever live stream. Don't know how this is going to go, so we'll take it as we see it. The intention behind this is to show you my production process, hopefully interact with you whilst I'm doing production, and really just try something a bit different. New year, try different things. I decided to start a new album, and I thought that would be a good opportunity to get back into YouTube. I think it's fair to say, since doing my last 3 in the studio videos at the beginning of last year, I really struggled for time to do production, and I decided to focus on the music rather than on kind of content creation and engaging with people. That was really a conscious decision, because for me this has always been about the music. But I also felt like actually I could share a bit more of what goes into making my music, and what goes into the production, the themes, the practices, the kinds of how I compose, select sounds, all of that kind of stuff. So I would love this to be a calm, creative space where I can share with you how I produce music. I'm not going to spoil the new album immediately by telling you all about it. You'll discover it along with me through these live streams. I'm not on a set cadence, so there won't be one of these every week or anything like that. I'll stream as and when I'm doing music, because this isn't my full-time job. I have a job alongside music being my passion. So I compose when I have the time to, and also when inspiration strikes. So that's going to be my commitment with this series of live streams, is that when I'm being creative, I'll be on camera and sharing how I create as I go. We've got Logic Pro set up here, and I'll be creating in this first live stream a template on for the production of the album. It's a concept album, so there are key things like sounds and phrases and motifs that I want to blend and revive and use throughout. So having a template is a very easy way of doing that, because it makes everything consistent, and rather than having to faff around with the software, I can just get straight into playing and recording when the time is available to me. So I've got a blank project here. The first thing I'm going to do is actually go into the mixer, and on the stereo out I'm going to put an adaptive limiter. Mainly, well, for 2 reasons. The first one being that I don't want to blow anyone's ear out with a ridiculous amount of sound by mistake. So let's just put that on there. You notice I've changed the gain up to 6 dBs. That's to make sure, there's a trick I learned from a YouTuber at some point in the past, in terms of their workflow. That is a very neat trick to make sure in your mix that you're actually leaving enough headroom for mixing and mastering. It's obviously a very arbitrary, rough figure, but it seems to work. For me at least. Also on the screen size that I've chosen for this, I appreciate if you're watching on a mobile device, this might be quite difficult to look at and read at, so I'll try and talk through what I'm doing as I'm doing it, especially if I'm setting numbers and figures and stuff. This is purely selfishly a blend between a screen size that's productive versus one that's readable. There's a big 32-inch monitor in front of me, and if I change it to an equivalent 1080p resolution, you can pretty much fit one window on it. And whilst it's very readable for me and might be more readable for you, it's not as productive as it could be given the resolution density. So let's see how that's coming through. I've got a default instrument track here with an instance of complete control. I've got the complete S61 as a keyboard, not the current generation, because they released some new ones last year or the year before. this is the previous generation, so I think the version 2 with the 2 screens rather than the one big one. Quite like the key feel of it. So most of my workflow is complete control focused because I quite like the lights and all the other way this integrates with the software. But I've also got some Arturia instruments as well as just Contact and the complete bundle. So you'll see a bit of variety in what I'm using. So let's just pick a just a patch from Analog Dreams and see. Okay, that probably should be 6 dB slower. Right, it was looking a bit more acceptable on the meter. If anyone does happen to be watching and just had their ears destroyed, I do apologise, but please just let me know in the chat if it is a bit too loud. So I've been having to think about the kind of sound palette that I want for this album, and I think the first thing I'm going to be doing is setting up all the classical instruments. In terms of that, I used the Symphony series, I think. The Symphony series or Symphony Essentials? Yeah, Symphony series. Symphony Essentials is the other one. So let's start by loading up the horns. Because if you've listened to any of my recent work, you'll know that for some reason I seem to love a good bit of brass. So let's rename that horns. And there is when you're using these kinds of libraries, especially with classical instruments, you sometimes do need to use key switches for the various different articulations. You can see me just cycling through them there. So if I wanted some staccato versus a more legato approach, that's obviously triggered via MIDI information via the keyboard. And I find that having that and the arrangement in the same MIDI region in the editor can be really quite difficult to deal with and difficult to look at, as in spotting where the key switch changes are happening in the articulations. So there's a way of duplicating this somehow, which I can never remember. New track with same instrument, that's it. So there's 2 tracks here now with the same complete control input, and both MIDI regions will be able to control the same instrument. So what I generally do is call the key switch track KS. I don't always create them for every orchestral instrument because it can get a bit ridiculous with the number of tracks, especially if you're just using the same articulation all the way through. You obviously don't need to use key switches. So, because the rest of it is done by the modulation, automation, and just the velocity of the keys. So, just wondering what that. Oh, okay. I never knew that. There's actually a button there. Actually, no, that's duplicate settings, not. No, that's not the same thing. That's why I haven't used that button. Right. So we've got horns, trumpets, tuba, trombone. That's another 3. So let's create another 3 tracks there. And then we'll head towards creating a track stack. So this will load up another load of instruments of complete control. And then let's go back down to Symphony Brass Ensemble. And okay, let's just go down these in order. Bit of a deeper brass instrument there from the trombones. Trombones. And then going to, oh, hang on, this isn't set up for following. Can be useful when you're dipping between things. Okay. Brass, trombones, trumpets. That's rather low for a trumpet. I'm surprised actually that they've used that as the default. I've got to keep remembering to reduce the volume on these tracks as well, to put them into the right headroom in the first place. Trumpets and oh, now that's definitely a tuba. So I quite like using track stacks, because especially if you use a summing stack, because it gives you a bus down here that you can do things like sends for a group of instruments, effects for a group of instruments, etc. So let's call this brass, and we can now collapse that. If I do that, is that going to duplicate the whole? Ooh, okay, that's helpful. Because now we can move straight onto strings. Go back to the library, load up a string ensemble. Okay, let's start with basses. And if this is working as expected, this should now be basses. Why has that not renamed itself? Interesting. Well, let's keep on going and see if... Let me just see what... That is clearly not a horn. Has that now renamed that? No? Curious. Maybe that button is a little bit too dangerous. Maybe I should leave it alone. Okay, cellos. Easily one of my favourite sets of strings. I've used those in, oh, I don't know how many. I don't know how many songs and tracks now. Violas. And last but certainly not least, violins. Okay, that's the strings. Now we need the winds. So let's add another 4 tracks. Instrument number 9. The wind? Oh, there it is. Right in front of me. That's where it is. Bassoons, clarinets, flutes, and oboes. Now, interestingly, I don't think I've ever used saxophones. No, I don't think I have. In fact, I think I'm going to go a little... Oh, there's bass winds as well. I think I'm going to go a little cheap here, because I suspect I will probably only want clarinets. And actually, have I left all of it? Oh no, that's fine. Just set all of these down by 6 dB. So that is clarinets. And this will be flutes. And that will be the winds for now. think one of the reasons why I quite like using the flutes is the kind of, there's always a bit in a sci-fi movie where they're kind of like in space or floating around, and then they've kind of got a just a little kind of like fluttery motif, and it always makes me feel of things just floating around in space. Okay, that's the winds. I think it's time to, should we do percussion or, let's have a look at percussion, because I'm not quite sure what sort of thing I'm going to want for this album, but things that I'd want easily available to switch to and kind of play with. I quite like this Abbey Road 80s drummer instrument, and there's a, I think you can see the star next to it there, this kit here. Now, part of this album may end up getting a bit synth rock-ish, so I want to have that available for any kind of like hi-hat riffs or anything a bit more traditionally, something that isn't necessarily soundtrack. Yeah, let's have that. So 80s. So next one, I'm going to have an Action Strikes patch, and I can't remember which of these is the sensible one to go for, so I'm just going to try all these out. And this, of course, being the beauty of Contact or Complete Control, is that you get to preview before you actually go into the instrument and load it, and it does make it a lot easier to select the kind of presets that you want for things. It's one of the reasons why I used this as a piece of software with limited time to compose and record. It really does speed up the discovery workflow. I normally end up, as you'll see, editing or customizing presets and patches selected from these libraries anyway, but if it can get you kind of 80% of the way towards the sound that you'd like, I think that's not necessarily a bad thing creatively. There's always the possibility, of course, that you go through 100 presets and not find one even remotely like what's in your head, at which point you just have to dust off the oscillators and do it yourself. Okay, that seems to be for more dramatic moments rather than background percussion. Right, I think I want the ensemble from memory. Ah, yes, that's right, and then you can select different ones from what's there. Wouldn't read too much into the title of what I'm choosing, but let's try War Ensemble. That's fairly nice epic percussion. Let's see what Rise of the Machines has got to give us. Yeah, okay, let's leave it with that at the moment. I can always change it if I need to later. Action Strikes. I'm very tempted as well to add an instance of damage on there, but due to the way the library is laid out, I could happily be here for hours searching through those presets. which I think would be stretching everyone's attention, including mine. So let's add another 4 tracks of complete control, because the last bit of percussion I want to add is, I think, down with the Symphony series. Yeah, Symphony percussion. So they have a couple of things here which are nice. The FX Drones kit I quite like. All sorts of weird, wonderful atmospheric sounds there. There's a kind of traditional orchestral percussion kit. Honestly, I thought there was going to be more in that. But no, just a single snare drum. Okay. Did I just see... Oh, sleigh bells. A bit late for that. And, okay, spoiler, this isn't going to be a Christmas album. It might release around Christmas by the time, you know, it's all done. And whether that's Christmas 26 or 27, who knows? I don't know how long this is going to take. Let's just go with the Big Hits kit. Again, I really thought there's... Let's open this up and have a look. Okay, that is C1 hits. Okay, that doesn't do anything. Neither does that. Is that actually... Oh. It's a very dramatic piano. Okay. You know, actually, I'm not convinced by that. There was something else down here, wasn't there? What was it? Ah, yeah, that's such a loud snare. I'm doing such a good job of keeping these levels under control, aren't I? Let's... Before I forget again, take these down to -6. The perfectionist in me, 5.9 is not good enough. Oh, okay, we've got some different lights here. What are these? Ooh. Ooh. Listeners in the UK, that's the countdown noise. Nice little shaker. Little bells. Anything up higher than that? Nope. Yeah, okay, might be useful. Let's go with percussion. That's not even remotely spelt right. Where's the R? Let's put the R in there. Okay, right. That won't necessarily need to be on the same bus, or even should be on the same bus, but just for the sake of organisation at the moment, I'm just going to call that percussion. Ah, I know what I wanted in there. I wanted an instance of battery. But I don't think I know exactly yet what I'll want from that until I start exploring the other sound selections for things like bass and maybe some pads and leads. So let's just leave that there as a placeholder at the moment. Although the one thing I will have to do, because of how battery works for mixing, is replace that with a multi-output stereo version. That's fine, that's there as a reminder. What that allows you to do, by the way, is it gives you this little plus and minus button here, and you'll be able to add additional mixer tracks out of the same instrument. So each individual element of a battery kit, you can then level and mix within Logic rather than having to do it within battery. I just prefer the mixing workflow to all be on one place. It makes it easier, or at least it does in my head. Okay, that's percussion. So, do I want to start with bass, look for some pads, or look for some leads? Let's look for some leads. And do we want to go Massive X or Pigments? It's typically my go-to synthesizers for big lead sounds. And part of the problem with this is just having this many software instruments between Complete and Arturia's V collection. It is truly the problem of choice, in that there is so much to pick from. It's a case of not knowing what to go to first. Start with Massive X, and let's have a look at favorites only. So one of these, I think, yes, unfortunately Super 8 R2 won't work anymore, as it's been subtly dropped. Let me see. Oh yes, that is a very nice lead, but I've used that too often before. Don't remember using that. That's clearly a bass. Fairly sure that was a... Oh, I think I used that as an arpeggio. Not bad. Now I think that is going to be more like it. Oh. Okay, that didn't load properly for some reason. Or did it? Oh no, it did. Oh. A little bit florid, but the idea behind this, X. Now, where I'm using particular presets, I do like to put the name of the preset in the channel name, because I've had instances in the past where I've loaded a project. This is mainly going between Intel and Apple Silicon, when Apple was doing the transition across those two architectures. In fairness to the software plugin manufacturers like Native Instruments and Arturia, I'm sure they were doing their level best to keep backwards compatibility with everything, because it must have been a minefield for them going through it all. But I had instances where tracks weren't loading their instruments properly, and then the actual sounds that I'd created had been destroyed effectively by the transition. So at the very least, if I'd customized the sound, to be able to get back to the preset, which would still be in the library, would allow me to then recreate the sound from that point rather than trying to recreate it from scratch. I have been getting slightly better at doing audio mix downs, as in producing stems and then mixing the stems in the same project with the instruments. But it's not a practice that I've been consistent with. Plus, maybe there is something good to be said of not being allowed to go back and tinker with the past all the time. Otherwise, the thing could all get a bit George Lucas. Okay, let's have that as the first of our synth leads. I just want to go and see what that last preset was that I had to start. Oh, that was the last one. I was thinking of something else. Clicky Picky and the Last Battle. Okay, let's see what Pigments has to offer. I don't think that will be quite the right vibe. do like that. I might need to speed the attack up a little bit. You know, let's load that up. Right, filter routing. That's the other problem with a lot of these interfaces, is that everything ends up being different across multiple. No, that's what I was looking for. Applied voicing. No, actually that wasn't what I was looking for. That is what I was looking for. Attack there's not too long. 1 millisecond. Maybe it's the decay then. I definitely do something spooky and sinister with that. So let's leave that. So that's Pigments, The Last Battle. Although that's definitely more of a pad rather than a lead. So let's add another 4. Put those all down to -6. You can see we've added a lot of tracks to this project because the rainbow track colouring that Logic can do automatically is now very much down in the dirty weeds of the colours available to it. Now, Ashlight is a bank of sounds that I've been wanting to use a bit more of for a while. I can't remember quite when Native Instruments released it, but there seems to be quite a lot of darker, cinematic, kind of soundtracky kind of textures in this one. So let's go for bass. And oh, there is one. Okay, what's this? It's clearly a bit more than just bass. So let's go for bass synth and see what that's got in it. Okay, so Angel Fall I've used before apparently. Ooh. Destiny Dawns, if I remember rightly. Oh, I've used that before as well, but I haven't started it as a preset. That, I think, might have been Singularity. Ooh, I kind of like that, but I'd probably strip the pad out of it. Let's have a look. Ooh, now it's a bit too hard. Maybe in some later tracks. I'll just start that one to remind myself. Dark Chase. Yeah, that could work. I struggle to see how that's bass. It's definitely a synth, but I struggle to see how that's bass. A bit too perky. Possible. Nope, too weird. Yes, that with a different rhythm, I think. Oh, that combined with The Last Battle could produce some interesting stuff. Okay, let's go with that. Ashlight. Okay, I've got enough now to start pads folder. So, yeah, one of those. Pads. Okay, probably add some more to that in a bit. But what was the other thing? There was another thing in Ashlight, wasn't there? Was it no signs of safety? No signs of safety or dark chase? I think no signs of safety might work better. Yeah. And I think the one thing that I will do is, let me just turn that right down. I wonder if there's a way to transpose that grain. Oh, yes, hang on. Surely there's a way. Aha, right, pitch and detune. So if I do that to minus 12. No, hang on, that's not what I was thinking. Way of resetting that? No, sometimes if you double click them it'll reset. Oh, that's really irritating. Right. Oh no. That was what I was looking for. So I am a musician, I have used this before, and I do know what I'm doing, is what I tell myself on a daily basis. That's a bit better, but I won't always want that playing, I don't think. Well, I'll deal with that another time, but that's a bit better. Okay, now I want a synth bass of some description. But not not from this category, because this is clearly the cinematic instruments. Straylight has got one, really. That's quite cyberpunk and dramatic. And I think Farlight is going to be a bit too vocal. That feels straight out of a teenage horror movie. I think we can be a bit more refined than that. Okay, now. Can I have a Jupiter 8 for some bass? Oh no, Korg MS-20. Let's. Okay, well, synth bass is a good start. Guess where that's inspired by? No, we do something a bit more original than that, I hope. I do quite like a simple plucky bass. Maybe if I do that and open the envelope a bit. Oh dear Lord. I have not seen this for a while. Right, pitch mode, cut off envelope, delay, attack. So 0 milliseconds, that's it. And that's quite delay. I feel like I'm missing something here. That was on 0. What's the release? Oh, now I can't remember what that was. What is it going to do? Right, I think that's back where it was. Cut off, modulation. I think I need to go and read the manual. Right, that's just the signal processor. That's definitely the envelope. Mod sidechain, high pass filter, low pass filter, that's fine. Oh, hang on, I am being an idiot. Where is cutoff modulation, pitch modulation? That's a bit more like it. £99 minus 20. I have only got the V, so we need to put that there, and that is Pluckman with a tweak. Right, okay, those are bases, so let's put these in a base folder. Okay, now the last base that I want is hopefully one that I've still got installed. I can't remember. Oh, it's Scarby, isn't it? I think. Oh, maybe not. Electric SD. Oh no, Scarby Rectifier based. There we go. Right, one of these I quite liked before. I know that I've used this one before. Kind of like no return. Oh, there goes the key switches. Might be a bit too heavy, but we can always dial it down in the mix if we need to. I'll just call it Scarby LB, and that is no return. Add that into the folder. Right, so what have we got? We've got the start of some pads. Haven't got much in the way of leads at the moment. So what have we got on this one again? Ah, interestingly, it could also be used as a pad. Actually, you could quite easily yeah, that's clearly a bit Terminator, but I'm okay with that. We can totally go for that. Okay, let's leave that as a lead for the time being. Let's add another one in and see. Maybe let's have a look at the pigments leads. I'm a bit gutted. I haven't actually looked at the CS80 yet, have I? I think I'm going to have to come back to that at another time. Let's have a look at the synth lead list and scroll to a random point in it to start. I always like doing that, by the way, rather than just starting at the top, because, you know, these ones down the bottom, like Venus, probably never get picked just because they're too low in the list. I'm struggling to see how that's a lead, and I can see why it may not get picked out of this list. A bit basic. Sharp. Quite like Super Jupiter, but I don't like the pitch wobble. Let's see if we can do. I'm willing to bet it's this, isn't it? What is this being used on? There. Right. Let's just take that off and see what it does. Okay, that's fine. So if I just put that back on and make that a bit slower. That's quite frustrating that even with that tiny amount enabled, it's still too much. These have got fine adjustments. Why isn't that one? Okay, let's try something else. How do I take that off there? How do I take that off there? Ah, right. If I take that, aha, right. Okay. Can I just drop that on there, or do I need to drag knob contours to create? Oh, okay. Maybe I can just do that. No. Ah, right. Okay. As you can see, it's been a while since I've used this. Thankfully, it seems to be quite intuitive. Let's see how this looks. Let's just change that down. Let's try that on there instead, actually. Let's take it off that one. And then let's see what. Change that down a bit. Did I change that unexpectedly? That's just 12, so that's not. I suppose it could be the FM modulation. I think that's okay. Yeah, I think that'll be a nice lead at various points. Super Jupiter, okay. Super Jupiter. I'm resisting at the moment putting a piano into the mix because I use pianos quite a bit and I don't want to go towards too much of a purely classical sound. So I want this album as a concept to definitely have a cinematic feel, hence why most of the orchestral instruments are in the mix. But I want to have a good blend of synths versus orchestral instruments, and I fear if I put piano into it, it might make it a bit too traditional. So I'll resist putting that in for the time being. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there. So save as template. And that's what I saved earlier. Replace. Did that actually save? Let me just do that again. Oh yes, it did, of course. When you save it as a template, it doesn't actually save the file you're working in. Well, thank you very much for joining me for this first live stream. As I said, there'll be more of these as we go through. The next one, I'm going to embark on composing the main theme for the album. And during that process, undoubtedly, you will find out a little bit more about the theme of what I'm going to be composing, and the more narrative themes that run through the album. I'll be talking about in due course as well. I'd love to hear whether you've enjoyed this live stream, if there's things I could do differently. Admittedly, all I've done is put a template together and played some tiny little motifs, and I appreciate it's probably a very simple start to things, but we'll see where this goes. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.